he's a big thinker. So he is always talking about he is at 30,000 feet and trying to think of the next great thing that will help people in the future.
It's hard for me to think of a better role model than Joe, just in terms of how he cares about people and about team and about the bigger picture.
What are we about? We're about teaching. We're about research. We're about clinical care. My residents over and over, what a great teacher. Research, he's done more for the field of stroke than any 2 or 3 humans combined. And clinical care, a worldwide expert.
Stroke is the nation's leading cause of adult disability and the 3rd leading cause of death. The most compelling research and expertise around stroke treatment can be found right here with the UC Stroke Team and its leader, Dr. Joseph Broderick.
I love patients. The patients are where you begin because they have stories to tell and they have real human problems that they're trying to have you help solve. But you get frustrated, or you should get frustrated, that you have a patient you were not able to help. And then you say, what can you do different? What can you do that can make that better? And that's the genesis for research. And so I get to do research to try to help not just the single person in front of me, but lots of people across the world.
Dr. Broderick has attracted $82 million in sponsored research funding over the past 15 years. He also became the first stroke investigator to receive the American Heart Association's Clinical Research Prize.
Joe is a master at getting grants funded, at getting people to want to participate in that kind of research and doing strong collaborative work to get science done and move forward.
And when you do research these days, it's not the image of somebody sitting in a lab with a microscope all by himself, poring over things for 5, 10 years and coming up with something. It's team science these days.
If you listed all of the ideal traits that a stroke doctor, researcher, and teacher should possess, you'd be describing Joe Broderick.
One of the things I think I have been able to do is pull people together and have us work on a project that can get us to maybe an answer or a new treatment.
Dr. Broderick clearly has a passion for compassion, taking care of people, and not just diagnosing them, but sitting down with them and holding their hand, and also being a really great neurologist and keeping all kinds of knowledge in his head that still amazes me to this day.
But I will never forget, I was probably a 3rd-year resident, which is the year that you sort of run the critical care bay. And I had a patient with an acute stroke. It was a Saturday afternoon, 1 or 2 o'clock. This patient had a crisis. This patient needed an opportunity. We made the call to the stroke team, and here comes Dr. Broderick right off the soccer field. Soccer clad, hair to toenails, looking like he just come off a soccer field, stood at the bedside, made critical decisions, elegantly took care of this patient, and then went back to what he was doing. And I said, that's really something.
Becoming a doctor is pretty much what you do in the Broderick family. Joe is one of 18 physicians in his and his father's generations. 6 more have followed in the next generation.
The joke is you can't throw a stick without hitting a Dr. Broderick in Cincinnati.
I did a rotation on neurology, and I knew that was the place that kind of combined my interest about how we are who we are, how our brains work, with being able to be a doctor and take care of people. And that's how I got to be a neurologist. So, UC is where that happened, and I'm very thankful for that.
After 5 years of neurological training at the Mayo Clinic, Broderick returned home and began to transform his field.
The way I describe a stroke to patients, the majority of strokes that we see are a blood clot blocks off one of the vessels carrying blood to the brain, and the brain needs the oxygen in the blood to survive. TPA is a way to reverse that process. We can give this substance, and it's actually a substance our body makes, but by giving a dose of it by vein, we can accelerate the process.
It was a drug that was used in heart attack victims and shown to work there. And so we tried to apply it in stroke, but there was, at the time, the reason why it was so exciting, there was no treatment for stroke. There was none, nothing that had been proven. So to go from a situation where there was never a treatment for a disease before and then have the first ever treatment, that revolutionized how we treat stroke patients.
I'm really the first generation of neurologists to grow up in my entire career knowing there was a treatment for stroke. When Joe started training, no such treatment existed.
Seeing somebody who couldn't talk and couldn't move one side of their body, treating them with a medicine and seeing a half an hour, 45 minutes where they're moving their arm and leg, they're talking, their family is, crying, and it's like, that's why I became a doctor.
For Joe and the UC Stroke team, the pivotal moment was a 1996 nationwide clinical trial that resulted in a major breakthrough in the use of TPA.
We did the trial with eight centers across the country, and we led that trial in terms of the amount of people recruited. The person presented the initial, which was a little bit, it was okay, and then they put up, it was the old days of transparencies. She put up 4 ACEs, and the 4 ACEs were our 4 endpoints in the trial, and they all came up ACEs. And I remember people throwing their paper in the air, and it was just it was a really cool moment. I remember walking outside that evening with one of my colleagues and said, you know, you don't do anything else in your life. You've done something of great significance. And that's a high five moment.
Such victories in research have translated into countless lives being changed and saved.
In the Cincinnati area, we cover every hospital in the region, which when you go to other cities, they say, are you crazy? But it's that network which is built on relationships that he helped to create a long time ago.
We get around 2,000 calls a year, which is an awful lot of consultation to serve this community. We treat almost 300 patients a year now with some form of aggressive, what we call reperfusion therapy, trying to get the artery that's causing the stroke back open. So to do that, it's probably the busiest team in North America.
Future advancements in stroke will largely build upon the work of Joe Broderick and the UC Stroke team.
We're in the process of applying to be the overall trial center for the United States, and the NIH will run every stroke trial through that single center. And just watching him create this grant has really been a tour de force.
You meet this guy, and he's so incredibly nice. And then you find out how accomplished he is, and you say, he's good at everything. I mean, thank God there's karaoke to level the playing field.
We all make mistakes, but you also, then you can learn from your mistakes. And I think part of the accomplishment you have is you're willing to risk things. You risk things together. Some things don't work. But when you do accomplish something with a group, that's a great feeling. It's more than yourself.
The University of Cincinnati Alumni Association is proud to present Dr. Joseph Broderick with a 2013 William Howard Taft Medal for notable achievement.